You just woke up to the news. Jermaine Johnson II is being moved to Tennessee in a one-for-one swap with T'Vondre Sweat, and the headline everyone's circling is the familiar coach-player reunion. This is the kind of transaction that reads like a movie subplot. A former coordinator who once wanted the guy now has the chance to bring him in as a head coach. On the surface, that's exactly what happened. Saleh saw a player who fits his front and his tempo, and he made the call to bring that player into his new environment. The trade isn't just noise, it's a deliberate schematic choice, and it immediately answers why teams value players differently depending on where they plan to run them. Let's break down the practical stuff first, because the numbers are why this was an attractive and risky play. Jermaine Johnson II comes with a premium edge rusher profile and a year of club control, but his fifth-year salary number is higher than a rookie-priced interior defender with 2 years. Left ear, that's the basic math that made the Jets lean the way they did in negotiations. The Titans wanted speed and edge explosion for the 4-3 front Saleh wants to run. The Jets got a massive nose tackle in T'Vondre Sweat, who immediately fortifies their interior run defense. You can see both fronts. Tennessee is buying a skill set that fits Saleh's vision even if it costs more in the short term, while New York balanced roster control and salary trajectory by acquiring a younger, cheaper interior. Peace. Now, why does this matter to you as a 49ers fan? Because the 49ers were reportedly aggressive on this player at the trade deadline last season. They even reportedly offered a third-round pick while the Jets wanted a second. That tells you two things. One, the front office recognized the same trait Saleh values, speed off the edge, and two, they were measuring that against long-term roster planning, team control, and cap flexibility. In plain terms, the 49ers liked Johnson's game, but balked at the second-round price for a one-year controlled rental that carries a big salary hit, so they made the conservative decision: keep the pick, keep the team control, and focus on youth in the draft instead. That's the same prudent play that's likely to keep this roster flexible as Raheem Morris comes in and reshapes defensive asks. Here's the real chess move in this whole story. Personnel control and scheme fit matter more than headline talent when you're building for sustained success. Saleh traded for a guy he knows how to use. That's the difference between a plug-and-play piece and a mismatch that wastes cap dollars. You've seen this before. Teams will pay up for a fit if it accelerates the coach's timeline. Tennessee's move screams urgency. Saleh wants to win now, and he's willing to spend to build his defense in real time. For the 49ers, that caution probably ended up being smart, holding a second-rounder that could turn into a 4-year cheap starter versus burning draft capital on a one-year rental. It's the classic pick versus price calculus. Quick check-in for you, real fast. In the comments, type SMART if you think the 49ers made the right call by standing pat, or type regret if you wish they'd paid up. I want to see a flood of one-word reactions so I can gauge what the faithful are thinking, and if you're new here or you want to keep getting breakdowns like this, hit subscribe. We're pushing for 2,000 faithful viewers who want real analysis, and every new subscriber helps us get better coverage for you. Mid-roll? If you like this kind of breakdown and want us to keep the lights on and the mics upgraded, consider using Super Thanks or the Hype feature. It's not a donation, it's fuel for the quest for the next Super Bowl trophy. It helps pay for travel, better cameras, and deeper research so we can give you more inside stuff. Even a small show of support helps us keep bringing the kind of coverage you trust. Short, loud, and to the point, under 45 seconds. Back to the football, what we learned immediately is that trades like this illuminate the difference between good on tape and good in system. Jermaine Johnson II thrived under Saleh's system in New York, so the fit is natural. T'Vondre Sweat gives the Jets a bully anchor they can lean on through the middle, two different answers to two different problems. For the 49ers, who were reportedly shopping at the deadline, the decision to offer a third instead of matching. A second shows a preference for youth and control in the draft, a decision that now looks defensible given Saleh's move to Tennessee and the price he was willing to pay. The next chapter I'm going to get into is what this means for the 49ers' new defensive architecture under Raheem Morris, who he'll ask John Lynch for, and which positions should get priority this offseason. Up next, how Morris's arrival widens the 49ers' target list and what positions you should expect them to chase. Now let's zoom this back to San Francisco, because the bigger story isn't just that Saleh reunited with a former player, it's that the 49ers were once in on that same target, and they walked away. That decision matters even more now that Raheem Morris is in the building. When you rewind to the trade deadline, the 49ers reportedly offered a third-round pick for Jermaine Johnson II, while the Jets held firm on a second. That gap tells you everything about how John Lynch values draft capital. A second-rounder is a top 60 asset. That's 4 years of affordable control, a player you can develop inside your own system, and a chance to build around youth rather than extend a veteran immediately. So the question becomes simple. Was it smarter to keep the second, or should the 49ers have pushed harder knowing edge help was needed? Think about the math. If San Francisco had sent that second-round pick, they'd now be staring at a sizable salary for a player on a short runway contract, and likely discussing an extension almost immediately. Instead, they kept flexibility. They preserved the ability to draft a player who fits whatever Raheem Morris wants to build, and that's the pivot point. This isn't Robert Saleh's defense anymore. It's Morris's vision now, and that changes the type of defensive linemen, safeties, and hybrid pieces the front office might prioritize. Morris is not locked into one defensive identity. That's what makes this fascinating. Saleh was synonymous with the four-man front and wide 9 edge rushers flying off the line. Morris has shown more multiplicity. He's comfortable blending fronts, showing 5-man looks, shifting between coverages, and asking defensive backs to do more than just sit in static assignments. That's why John Lynch's recent comments about expanding the sample size of prospective players are important. It means the 49ers are widening the net. A player who might have been labeled 3-4 only before could now be viable. A hybrid edge who can stand up or put his hand in the dirt might suddenly make more sense. That flexibility is a quiet advantage. Here's a quick vote for you. Would you rather the 49ers keep building through the draft with cost-controlled talent, or cash in picks for proven veterans right now? Type draft or now in the comments. I want to see where the faithful stand on this, because here's the reality. Scheme fit beats raw talent more often than fans want to admit. On paper, you can argue T'Vondre. Sweat might be the more dominant player in a vacuum. Massive presence, interior force, 2 cheap years left. But if your defense is built around edge pressure and speed, you prioritize that. Tennessee did. For the 49ers, the edge need is real, but it has to align with how Morris plans to deploy pressure. Are we talking more simulated pressures, more nickel blitz packages, more safety rotation disguises? Those answers determine whether you invest premium picks in an edge or look for versatility across the line. And this is where the conversation gets layered, because if Morris increases 5-man fronts or blends in 3-4 principles, the body types on the roster matter. Suddenly, you're evaluating defensive ends who can kick inside on passing downs. You're looking at linebackers who can rush or drop. You're thinking about defensive backs who can rotate down and blitz without exposing the back end. That's not a rigid system. That's adaptive football. Let me challenge you with this. True or false? The 49ers' biggest defensive need isn't just edge help, it's versatility. Drop true or false below, because if versatility is the priority, then preserving that second-round pick becomes even more valuable. It gives you options. It lets you draft the best chess piece rather than locking yourself into one expensive answer. And don't forget, every move the 49ers make now has to consider the core pillars already in place. You're not rebuilding, you're reinforcing. When you already have foundational players anchoring key spots, the goal isn't splash, it's precision. It's about finding complementary pieces that maximize the stars you already trust. That's why patience at the deadline wasn't weakness. It may have been discipline. If you've been riding with this channel through all the Lynch-era moves, make sure you're subscribed. We're pushing toward 2,000 subscribers, and every new member of the faithful here strengthens this community. This isn't just reaction content. This is roster-building discussion at a high level. Now here's where this gets even more interesting. If Morris expands the defensive toolbox, the ripple effects don't stop at edge rusher. They extend to the secondary, they extend to how safeties are deployed, They even impact how often corners are sent on pressure packages, and that's going to lead us into a bigger picture conversation about the back end of this defense, who fits, who might not, and what that means for the 49ers' next Super Bowl. Push, because this isn't just about the trade that happened, it's about the moves that didn't happen, and how those decisions shape what comes next. In the final chapter, we're going to dig into the safety room, the offensive line narrative, and the bigger questions some fans keep floating out there about foundational players. We're going to separate emotion from roster logic and talk about how championship teams actually build. Now let's zoom out and talk about the ripple effects, because this is where the real conversation begins. If Raheem Morris is bringing more multiplicity to this defense, then the back end becomes just as important as the front. And I want you thinking about this through one lens: adaptability. The modern NFL punishes static defenses. If you show the same shell pre-snap and post-snap, good quarterbacks will carve you up. So the question isn't just who can tackle, it's who can disguise, rotate, blitz, and cover without tipping your hand. Start at safety. The 49ers have young talent there, but the fit depends entirely on how Morris wants to structure his coverage disguises. You've got Jair Brown, who flashed but profiles more as a traditional safety. You've got Malik Mustafa, who showed serious promise before the injury. And then you've got Maris Seagull, elite athletic traits but still developing ball skills. If Morris leans into more split safety looks or rotates safeties down into man coverage against slot receivers, that changes the evaluation. Suddenly the ability to cover one-on-one becomes as valuable as pure range. And that ties directly into corner usage. Upton Stout was one of the most effective blitzing corners in football when he was sent. That's not random, that's a weapon. But you can only unlock that weapon if your safeties can rotate and hold up in coverage. This is how modern defensive structure works. Every position supports the other. If your safety can flex down and cover a slot receiver cleanly, you can free your nickel to attack the quarterback. If your nickel can cover, your safety can be the pressure piece. That uncertainty is what creates chaos for offenses. So here's my question for you. Should the 49ers prioritize a versatile safety early in the draft? Type safety if you think that's the move, or line if you still believe defensive line is the top priority. I want to see where the faithful land on this. Now let's address something that keeps popping up: the offensive line narrative. There's this idea floating around that the line is broken. It's not. It's middle of the pack. That's the truth. The bigger issue last season wasn't catastrophic line play. It was consistency, injuries, and perimeter blocking drop-off. When the run game dipped, it wasn't just because guards were losing instantly, it was because tight ends were unavailable, receivers weren't sealing edges, and interior cohesion slipped at key moments. There's room to upgrade, absolutely. Left guard is an obvious place to improve. Center needs a long-term plan, but this isn't a tear-it-down unit. And then we get to the emotional takes, the trade chatter around foundational players. I've seen the comments. Test the waters. Cash in. No. Championship windows close when you start moving A-list pillars for the sake of change. Nick Bosa is a force multiplier. You don't trade force multipliers, you pair them with the right pieces, you refine the scheme around them, you maximize their impact. That's roster. Construction 101. If you start shipping out elite edge talent because you're frustrated, you're not building, you're reacting. This is where I need you locked in. Championship teams build around pillars, they draft well, they supplement wisely, they avoid panic trades. The 49ers kept their second-round pick, they kept flexibility, they brought in a coordinator who expands the defensive palette. That's not stagnation, that's recalibration. Quick pause, because this part matters. If you believe in building this community the same way, strong foundation, smart additions, use the super thanks or the hype feature right now. Not as a donation, but as fuel for the quest for the next Super Bowl trophy. Every bit of support helps upgrade production, improve coverage, and keep this space thriving for the faithful. We're chasing 2,000 subscribers, and every click, every share, every bit of support pushes us closer. If you ride with this team, ride with this channel. Back to the roster. The 49ers' path forward isn't about copying what Tennessee just did. It's about tailoring the defense to Morris's adaptability while reinforcing the offensive structure without overreacting. That likely means adding interior defensive line depth that can play multiple fronts, exploring safety versatility, improving guard play, and continuing to develop young pieces rather than mortgaging draft capital recklessly. And here's the bigger takeaway. The move that didn't happen at the deadline may end up being just as important as the trade that did. By not overspending, the 49ers preserved options. Options win in April. Options win in cap management. Options win when injuries hit. You don't feel that in the moment, you feel it over time. So now I'll throw it to you directly. If you could add one piece to this roster, just one, what position are you choosing? Edge, defensive tackle, safety, or guard? Drop it in the comments. I'm reading them, and I'll break down the most common answers in the next video.